Video, we're going to take a look at service department cost allocation using the reciprocal method. We're going to revisit our example with the Carlisle Coal Company. The reciprocal method allocates cost of service departments to other service departments as well as the end user departments. Notice in our diagram, the solid lines indicate cost allocations. The admin department allocates cost to the information systems department, a service department, as well as the end user departments, the Hilltop Mine and the Pacific Mine. At the same time, Information Systems is allocating cost to the admin department, as well as the end user departments, the Hilltop Mine and the Pacific Mine. The reciprocal method recognizes all services provided by any service department, including services provided to other service departments. It accounts for cost flows among the service departments providing services to each other. It requires the use of simultaneous equations, which we can solve algebraically, or we can solve using Excel. Let's work through a problem. We're given direct cost for the Hilltop Mine for both the service departments and the end user departments. We're told that the cost of the admin department is allocated on the basis of the number of employees. Information Systems has 2,000 employees, the Hilltop Mine 5, and the Pacific Mine 3,000 for a total of 10,000. The cost of Information Systems will be allocated based on computer hours used. Admin uses 100,000 hours, the Hilltop Mine 20, the Pacific Mine 80, for a total of 200,000. We begin by picking up the direct costs of the service departments as well as the user departments. Next, let's pick up the number of employees in Information Systems, 2,000. We're told Hilltop Mine has 5,000, Pacific Mine 3,000 for a total of 10,000. Computer hours used by the admin department, 100,000 hours of support, the Hilltop Mine 20,000, the Pacific Mine 80,000 for a total of 20,000. Next, we have to calculate the allocation percentages. Information Systems has 2,000 out of our 10,000 employees, so will be allocated 20% of the cost to the admin department. The Hilltop Mine has 5,000 out of 10,000 and will be allocated 50% of the admin department costs. The Pacific Mine has 3,000 employees out of 10 and will be allocated 30% of the total cost in the admin department. The admin department used 100,000 hours of support time, which is 50% of the total hours, and will be allocated 50% of the total cost of Information Systems. The Hilltop Mine will be allocated 10%, and the Pacific Mine will be allocated 40%. Let's go ahead now and work on our cost allocations. The cost from admin will be both the direct cost and the indirect cost transferred in from Information Systems. So we're going to have the 500,000 of direct cost, and we're also going to transfer out an unknown amount of cost coming in from Information Systems. So for right now, our formula shows $5 million. But had we had 1 million or 100,000 in indirect costs coming in, it would have been 5,100,000. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to do with Information Systems. The cost coming out of Information Systems will be the 800,000 in direct cost and whatever we pick up in the terms of indirect costs. Now we can go ahead with our cost allocations. The cost coming out of Information Systems, we know that 50% of it will be allocated to the admin department. 10% of the cost will be allocated to the Hilltop Mine, and 20% of the cost will be allocated to the Pacific Mine, or make that 40% of the cost to the Pacific Mine. Now, coming in from Information Systems into admin, or rather from admin into Information Systems. Currently, admin has $5.4 million in cost. And of that, it's being allocated on the basis of number of employees. 20% of our employees work for Information Systems, so Information Systems will get allocated 20% of that cost. Notice we have a pop-up box that says there are one or more circular references where a formula refers to its own cells directly or indirectly, and this might cause them to calculate incorrectly. And we can see that circular reference here. We've got the cost from admin is being used to calculate the cost, or cost from Information Systems is being used to calculate the cost coming into admin, which then in turn is being used to calculate the cost being transferred out, and so on. So admin is dependent on information systems. Information systems is dependent on admin cost. To reset or to handle this circular reference, we need to go to the settings in Excel. We go up to File. From File, we come down to Options. From Options, we go to Formulas, and we enable iterative calculations, and we set the value of iterations. Typically, I set it at 100. You might have a different version of Excel, and if so, the setting on or turning on of iterations will be different. Google how to change the iterations or set the iterations in your version of Excel. Once we turn on iterations, our circular reference disappears and we can go on with our worksheet. Of the $6 million cost in admin, we know that 50% of it will be allocated to the Hilltop mine. And of the $6 million cost coming from admin, 30% of it will be allocated to the Pacific mine. Again, we want to sum our columns or sum our rows to make sure that they sum to 0. This ensures that we have allocated out all the costs from each of our service departments, and we haven't allocated out too much costs. We also, of course, want to make sure our columns sum to 0 to ensure that we've allocated out or closed out all the cost in each one of our service departments. And as a final check, we make sure that our total cost ties in with the total cost we're given in our problem. Let's now take a look at how we would solve this algebraically. In particular, we're going to need to pay attention to this 20% and 50% allocations. We had our direct costs in information systems, and we picked up 20% of the cost from the admin department. Admin had $5 million in direct cost and picked up 50% of the cost coming in from information systems. Let's use that information to set up a simple algebraic equation. And here we have it, and I encourage you to write it out this exact way. Total cost equals the direct cost plus the allocated cost. Information systems had $800,000 in direct costs, plus it was going to pick up 20% of the cost from the admin department, which in this case is simply being labeled S2. The admin department had $500,000 in direct costs and was going to pick up 50% of the cost of the information systems department. Once we have our two equations, we can substitute the first equation into the second equation. Notice, here's our 800 plus 0.2 S2. Then we do a little bit of algebra and can solve for S2. The total cost of the admin department is $600,000. Notice, that's what we found or solved for with our Excel worksheet using iterations. The final step would be to substitute the value of S2, the $600,000, back into our original equation for information systems, and we solve for the cost at information systems of $2 million, which again agrees with the cost we found on our worksheet. Of course, then we would take that $2 million in cost, assign 10% of it to the Hilltop mine and 40% of it to the Pacific mine. For the $6 million cost, we would have taken 50% of it, assigned it to the Hilltop mine, and we would have taken 30% of the $6 million and assigned it to the Pacific mine.